Right, g'day everyone. Welcome to Elements of Narrative, and this is all about plot. So here's what we've been studying so far. Once we've covered all of them, then we'll get into our essay work. So what is plot? At its most simple level, plot is the events and the actions of a story. So why does plot matter? Well, the writer needs to make sure they select plot points, or rather events, that match the audience's expectations, the purpose that they're trying to achieve, and also the genre. So for example, if we're in the murder mystery genre and we don't have an event where the murder takes place or the body is discovered, then it's not going to match the genre. Also, if we think about purpose, if one of the purposes of the story is to discuss the idea of justice, then we need to have an event that deals with the idea of punishment. From the reader's perspective, the reader needs to know what to expect. They need to know what sort of events we're going to get here. If they're watching a thriller, they know they're going to get the types of events that have people's lives in danger, but also to be surprised. So we want to know, for example, that if it's a thriller, that the protagonist, the main character, their life is going to be threatened and they have to unravel the machinations of the antagonist, but we want to be surprised about how they do that. So that's why surprising but inevitable is a nice catchphrase for thinking about the plot events. So what's the connection between plot and the other elements? Well, first of all, genre. There's a really strong connection between genre and the plot points that happen in a story, because the expectations of the genre need to be satisfied. Does that mean that the genre conventions shouldn't be subverted at times? No, again, depends on the genre. If it's literary fiction, then we know there's going to be some bending of the conventions of genre. But generally speaking, we can play with genre expectations as long as the main ones are satisfied. Structure is all about organizing the plot points so that they achieve curiosity and entertainment, or at least achieve their purpose. If it's a story, there's going to be an element of entertainment involved there, rather than boredom or confusion. They're the two extremes. Boredom is where the reader knows what's going on. Nothing is surprising. Everything's expected. Confusion, on the other hand, is where the reader can't figure out what's going on. And both of those are death for a story. Stylistic devices. They can reinforce the impact of an event. So, for example, if the writer really wants to break the heart of the readers, for example, they might choose to kill a beloved character or have some real tragedy befall them. And so the stylistic devices, the language that's used, can really help reinforce the feeling of loss that's caused by an event. Alternatively, the language or the stylistic devices can provide a counterpoint. So, for example, it might be a really sad scene or a violent scene, but very light-hearted language is used. And so comedy will often do this to juxtapose the stylistic devices or the language that's being used in the story against the events. And point of view, who is telling the story will influence the way the reader interprets the events. So again, I think there's some connection between stylistic devices here, but the connotations and the way that an event is presented definitely influences the reader's perception of those events. Moving on. Setting. What's the relationship between the plot and the setting? This is really important because setting can be a major force of antagonism, in which case the plot and the setting are really important. It depends on the genre as well. Oftentimes the setting is crucial for the plot events. Sci-fi and fantasy often does this, where there are technical or environmental aspects to the world, such as the magic system or the technology system that's being used, and that's going to shape what plot events can happen and what can't happen as well. Theme influences the events a writer chooses because, as I mentioned before, if it's a theme of justice, then there's going to be need an element of punishment in the plot. If it's about the value of friendship, then there's going to need to be an event that causes two characters to really realize the value of their friendship. Conflict. Ideally, plot should unfold because of the conflicts within the story. And it doesn't always have to happen like that, of course. There's always exceptions and other ways to do it. But generally speaking, if there isn't a close connection between the conflicts embedded in the story or the forces of antagonism, then and that connection isn't there with the events that are happening, a story can often seem contrived or manufactured, and the reader won't engage with the story anymore. Then finally, character. Character is really important because plot can be done to a character. So there's going to be events that are happening and the character is constantly reacting to them, because of a character's actions. Now, oftentimes there's a mixture of both, especially at the start of the story. There's plot events that are happening to the character, but as the story progresses, the character learns, matures, deals with their internal desires and faults, and then they start making the right decisions, and those decisions lead to the events that happen. So, and they're often some of the most satisfying stories and also the most engaging, is where we're seeing these characters make decisions based on who they are, based on their personalities, based on their wants and desires, and those decisions make sense to us, and then we see the unfolding of events because of those things. So when there's that nice close connection between character and plot, it tends to have really powerful impact, whether it's for theme, message, or straight entertainment value. I mean, you just have to look at things like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad to see how that plays out in the amount of engagement that an audience gets through having close connection between character, conflict, setting, and plot. Right. Thank you. And any questions, please leave them for me. Thank you.